All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is the Eventful Life, and we are continuing our series of Living Out Loud. Today, our episode is talking about activating your authentic activism. And I'm extremely excited to bring to you three women who I believe walk this out, have been walking this out in their personal and professional lives, especially as it relates to right now with regards to the racial injustices and the racism that we have seen the Black community be faced with. And so I think it's important that we have this dialogue about what does that look like? How do you activate your authentic activism and use your voice in an authentic way? Because over the last few weeks, we definitely have seen some ways that it has that voice has been used well, but then in other experiences, we have also seen where that voice has come across a little unauthentic. I am Janelle Boyd. I am your host. I am also the founder of the Eventful Life, and I am excited to have you with us today. So, first and foremost, I want to kick things off by letting the ladies share a little bit about who they are, both personally and professionally. Dr. Lydia, hello. Why don't you share with everyone who you are and what you do?
Hello, thank you for having me and us, Janelle, and for this important conversation. My name is Lydia Carlis. I am the Chief Imagination Officer for Imagination Enterprises, LLC. We are an educational consulting and visual arts company based in Washington, D.C., and we help people see what is, imagine what can be, and work creatively to get there together. Across both businesses, I really focus on Black children, Black women, and people of color. So people from historically marginalized backgrounds are my heart and the work that I get to do every day.
Yes, and that you do so beautifully.
Thank you.
All right, Sasha, if you don't mind, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. So I am Sasha Willis. I am owner of Creations by Sasha, which is a lifestyle brand, and it's geared towards modern womanhood. So I talk about everything from being a wife, being a woman, trying to do all the things, all the many roles that we as women play. I cover all of that on my blog and on Instagram. I'm also the co-host of the Swirl and Sip podcast, which launched in January. So we just finished up our first season, and my co-host and I talk a lot about how um, raising our sons and being married women of color in this country and all of the ins and outs and everything that goes along with that and how we're managing all that. So I have a 2-year-old little son. So, and then I'm married. My husband and I, we've been together for 17 years, married for 4 years. So that's just a little bit about me.
Awesome, awesome. And you guys specifically kind of talk from the Latina
I do.
perspective.
I'm a very, very proud Puerto Rican woman. I talk about it all the time. I have like a multicultural family. My husband, he's a Black man, so I'm raising a little Afro Latino boy. But I'm a proud Boricua, as we say, and I don't hide it at all.
No, rightfully so. I love it. And then we have Kirsten Palladino of Equally Wed. Kirsten, hello. Why don't you introduce
Hi.
yourself to us?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I really am honored to be here with you guys or ladies. So my name is Kirsten Palladino, and I'm the co-founder of Equally Wed. It's the world's leading, largest, most trafficked, whatever, LGBTQ plus wedding publication. And my wife and I have been running that for 10 years. I've been in the journalism field for 20 years, and I am a proud queer woman. And I've considered myself an activist my whole life, but what I've understood to be activism has evolved, and every year I'm getting better, but this year I'm really going in.
Yes, you have been, and I love it. And I would say, Kirsten, I'm very much in the same boat with you. I very much have used my voice over my lifetime to speak up about just things that impact women in business. But I am also learning that my voice has evolved over time, and so I'm learning to find that new voice, right, as we push forward here. So thank you for sharing that. And actually, you carried us right on into our next our next question here, which is, what does authentic activism mean to each of you? I think it's important to share that, because again, right now with the racial climate, you do have a lot of people searching for how to use their voice, and just searching for their voice, period, right? Because it can be very noisy out here. People are passionate and they want to be heard, and rightfully so. But I think it's important to identify, what does that authentic activism look like for each of you? Anybody want to kick it off? Why don't we start with you? We'll start with you this time, Kirsten, since you ended us last time.
Unmute. Okay, so for me, I think, well, see, now I was waiting for everybody else to answer. So can you repeat the question?
Sorry, I threw that curveball there at you.
So for me, for what activism has evolved for me in terms of what I've seen, is that?
Yeah.
Right?
So
Or
just, what does it mean to you to as far as authentic activism, like what does that mean to you when you feel like you are being authentic in your activism, which I think you stated, some of it just a moment ago, as far as it evolving. And, and then let me just add this part too, because I think it pairs well with what we're talking about here, but also, how have you used your authentic activism to speak out and stand against the racial injustice and, inequality of Black people?
Right. Okay. So I think especially for white folks or any non-Black people, it's really important first to listen and to get educated. What I have learned most, I've always thought, oh, I'm not a racist, but that my evolution of understanding, what that means has really grown in my lifetime. I think that to really be an anti-racist activist in the community and in the world is not being afraid to have those behind the scenes conversations with our racist relatives, racist company owners, and I think what I'm learning in terms of the psychological ways to have those conversations where people are not defensive, but like, hey, what do you think about hiring some Black people this year? Or why are there no Black speakers up here at this conference I'm speaking at? Or, oh, you want me to speak on anti-racism? Well, here are 5 Black people I know that would do it justice and actually, they get paid for this work and they know what they're talking about. A lot of what I have seen in the discrepancies, like in the wedding industry where I'm at, some I've seen with my own 2 eyes, but I also have my eyes open, like Eliana at the Be Collective magazine has taught me and shown me what has happened to her in the wedding industry that I didn't even realize was happening. Amber Marlowe at Catalyst and a photographer called it out in a group I'm in, that Harper's Bazaar 100 best, whatever, wedding professionals, there wasn't a Black face to be seen.
Right.
One, I didn't even check out the list. I don't care about lists, but I care now that the Black faces were not seen in there. But I also have to have my eyes open. So I have to have my ears open and get educated that way so that I can go forward, because once you've seen, then you can't unsee. you know, then you're going into crowds and being like, why is it so white? Why did we not invite Black people to this, you know? But I have to be honest and say that I didn't always originally see that, because, you know, when you have that white privilege, you're just accustomed to it, and we have to check ourselves, but we just have to be more honest with ourselves, to be open to checking ourselves, and to not be defensive about it.
That's good. That's good. I love that you said, you know, once you see, you can't unsee, right? I think that's so good. And it reminds me of a quote that I read. I'm currently reading So You Want to Talk About Race. And it's a great book, but I love the fact that, and I'm not going to try to pronounce the author's name because I will butcher it, I'm sure of it, but I would highly recommend anyone checking it out, because it is a good book. I'm halfway through it and can't put it down, but I think it's a great, there was a quote she said that's in the beginning where she said, you know, once I started to use my voice, I couldn't be quiet, right? And I equate that to what you said about once I see, I can't not see, you know, because I think there does have to be something that's awakened in you. And you know, I will offer that I think it happens to Black people as well as white people. I think from a different standpoint, but I do think that there were things that were awakened in me that maybe had not been before. So, Sasha, I want to go to you and ask you the same question. So, you know, what does authentic activism mean to you? And then, you know, share with us how you've been able to, you know, activate that as it relates to the Black community.
Sure. So authentic activism to me, and my experience, of course, is often a little bit different from Kirsten. I grew up Prince George's County, Maryland, probably the only Hispanic woman in any school that I went to, but always surrounded by Black people. And, you know, Black culture, it's the wealthiest Black county in the country. And so seeing these images of professional Black people doing well in society has all that I've ever known. And, you know, I see it in my husband's family, you know, that everybody's gone to college, everybody has good jobs, but so it's never been something that I would have thought that I've needed to activate per se. I've always just been surrounded by, you know, this uplifting of Black culture. I think what recently started is when I switched my brand. I used to be in the wedding industry. I did stationery, and when I switched it to doing my lifestyle brand, I was allowed to be more of my authentic self, because when you're trying to get wedding clients, you don't want to offend anyone, especially when you're trying to get the high paying ones, you know, and a lot of those clients unfortunately tend to be white people. So, you know, you don't want to ruffle any feathers. But once I decided to do a lifestyle brand, I was like, I'm going to be me. And being me means that I stand for my husband and I stand for my son. I'm raising a little Afro-Latino boy. And with everything that's going on, you know, my first thought when I was pregnant was, you know, what does that mean for him? You know, what does that mean when he gets older? And my life is a little complicated by the fact that my husband is a Black police officer. So he deals with things on his end where, you know, overt racism from other officers that he deals with. But on the same line, he's also, you know, he takes that uniform off. He's a Black man. He's been racially profiled. He's been handcuffed before when he was younger. So I've seen all of that. And so I have this perspective where I want to, you know, protect my son. I want him to be proud of being, you know, Black, because the world will see him as Black. But I also, you know, understand some law enforcement. I'm not the Blue Lives Matter person. But, you know, I see that dichotomy as well. And so for me, it's just being proud of who I am, being proud of my family is my authentic activism. And it's standing up for my husband, for my son. You know, I think the podcast allowed us, me and my co-host, to really talk about this more and how it affects our family. We've done Instagram lives specifically like geared towards our white listeners, because I know a lot of them have questions but don't know who to ask. I created a whole resources page on my website, like here's where you start if you want to learn. But I think by showing people that you know, the image of what you may think a Black family isn't necessarily true, that, you know, there's such success and pride that goes into it. And me being a proud Spanish woman while still embracing Black culture and lifting that up as well is how I show my activism in that.
That's great. No, I love that. I particularly thought it was interesting how you said once you shifted your business from, you know, the stationery, the wedding stationery to the lifestyle brand, that you felt, you know, you felt like you could give yourself permission to talk about those things.
It was a little bit of freedom.
Right. I you know, again, I can identify with that because I struggled with that when I first started my business. Like, how do I want to, I had to ask myself, do I even want to put myself on the website at first, you know, and I absurd as that is looking back, it was a question, you know. Okay, so Lydia, I'm coming to you next. Share with us, please. What does authentic activism mean to you?
I think, like Kirsten said, it's starting with learning, and it's like knowing the truth. So figuring out what is right, what is good, and then doing that every day. Whether you are doing that from the perspective of a national platform, or you are doing that with your family members, again, as Kirsten said, and then Sasha reiterated, but that every time you see something, you say something, that you don't, and you figure out where the best time and place is to say it. Sometimes it's in that moment and sometimes it's after, but it's always right to say what is right, and it's always right to do what is right. So I think that's important. And I also think that it's important for us to remember that we can unsee what we can unsee what we have seen. Because if we look at the history of America, slavery ended once we got a campaign, a media campaign helped to end slavery. When people started seeing the visuals of our bodies burned and our bodies whipped, then we got something going to end slavery. Civil rights ended because of a media campaign. Like that was the catalyst for the country really coming together and saying, we got to do something about this.
Right.
But we're right back where we were because we can unsee what we have seen. We choose to do that when it does not impact us. So I would say that individually, we may not be able to unsee, but until we change systems, our country will continue to unsee. And those systems that need to change are vast. But education, obviously, being one of them, as well as media. I don't think it's an accident that I focus on education and media, because those are two very powerful ways that we come into the belief of what is right, what is good, what is true, what is American even. So I think that we have authentic activism means focusing on all the ways that we could begin to unsee again, and staying vigilant and diligent about holding up that light and not letting it go.
That's good. That's really good. And I like that you remind us that we have to stay vigilant about it, because, you know, one of the things that I said just the other day to my husband, I said, you know, I feel the shift. I feel like I see the shift. I said, but my greatest fear is that this is not just a moment, you know, that this shift is not just temporary, that we will continue to understand that this is a movement, this is a process. We have to continue, like you said, to stay vigilant and keep lifting our voices, even when, you know, feeds go back to kitty cats and rainbows, you know. So it's important, you know, that it really is. So so let's move into the next question, which I think, again, you know, I don't know how you guys are doing this, but you're kind of segueing us into into each conversation. But as we all know here, you know, many, again, are struggling with what to do during this time. You know, they're like, okay, do I post something? Do I not post something? And I think particularly, not just, but particularly our white colleagues, you know, who are having these conversations for some for the very first time. And so as I look around, I see that some are really struggling with, you know, what do I say? Do I say anything? You know, is it wrong of me to take time to collect my thoughts? And I see it in you know, with Black people as well, you know, because we're trying to figure out, you know, I don't want to go out here and just cut everybody head off, but I know I need to say something, right? So so I think, you know, all groups of people are struggling with it, but in a different way. What are your thoughts on this? You know, is there accountability to say something? And is there a time limit? You know, I actually saw one comment, you know, just in looking at a colleague's post, I saw one comment where, you know, someone actually said, hey, listen, it took you too long to speak up on this. I think it had been a week after, you know, George Floyd's death that she finally said something, you know, on her feed, and somebody said, hey, you're late to the party, you know. So what are your thoughts on that? Is there a time limit in all of this? And what's the accountability that each person has? Who wants to jump in there?
I guess I'll start first this time since the other two ladies went first before. I personally don't think there's a time limit, because I think that you don't want to just go out there and say something dumb, and you know, because you feel like you have to say something. And because I saw that happen in a lot of Facebook groups I was in, people just throwing stuff out there and they were just all the way wrong. Like you are coming at it the wrong way. So I don't think that there's a time limit on that, but I do think it has to be sincere and not just a one-time thing. Like, don't just say something because you feel, oh, everybody else is saying something, I should too, if it doesn't really matter to you. Like, you know, I've seen the little meme where it was like, oh, Blackout Tuesday, and then now you feed back to just white faces. Like, unless you plan on actually incorporating and learning and doing the work that goes along with this movement, because I think that is what's happening right now. I mean, we've seen this happen countless times, and I think this time does feel different for me. If you're not going to continue that, if you're not going to research and how do I incorporate more people of color on my feed? How do I hire more people of color? Like, am I going to shop at Black businesses? Like, can I find someone else, you know, to do my nails that's, you know, Black woman, or, you know, like cut my hair or buy products from? Like, if you're not thinking like that and then amplifying those voices, because that's also it as well, then I think it's a disservice to speak on it. Like, you're not going to help anything by feeling like you have to say something.
Right. No, I think that's a good point, Sasha. Again, going back to just being authentic, you know, and don't just jump out there. I think a lot of people are leading with emotion, which is, you know, some of that is understandable, but you know, process. I'm like, I've said that a lot. I feel like I've said that a lot lately. Like, you know, allow yourself to process first before you speak. Lydia, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that I agree with Sasha that you should not put out a whole big statement if you don't know what you really believe, yeah, and what you really are committed to do. But I do think that it is important that even if you don't know what to say, that you say that. I think that there is a time limit for your internal staff. So if you have Black staff and you have not said anything, shame on you. If your business is built on the backs of Black oppression, like school systems, and you have not, like public school systems, and you have not said anything, shame on you. Even if that is, we have failed when it comes to anti-racism.
Yeah.
We do not know what comes next, but we know something has to be different.
Right.
We commit to figuring that out and coming back later to talk about this more. That's enough. Like, you don't have to have these Ben and Jerry statements. They've been true to this for years.
Yeah, they have.
That's why they can have the statement.
And you can tell.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But for certain businesses, I hold them more accountable than others. And it's not that I don't think everyone should care about this issue. I know everyone will never care about this issue, but there are certain businesses and certain lines of work, if you will. In addition, so education is one. Pastors who pastor in Black communities. Shame on you if you have not said anything. And that's Black pastors, white pastors, whatever color of the rainbow you may be. If your congregation is the group that is harmed by this, and you are not speaking to the needs of the needy, shame on you. So I would just say, you need to say something. You need to figure out what that's gonna be. But while you're figuring it out, let people know that you are thinking about it, that
you are figuring it out.
And that you are doing the work to figure it out.
I love that. I love that. One of my colleagues, she reached out to me very quickly after things happened and said, Janelle, I'm sorry. I know you're probably trying to process too, but I don't know what to say. And I literally said what you just said, Lydia, which is, you don't have to know what to say, but you need to let them know that you don't know what to say. So you're figuring out what to say, I think, again, that goes back to authenticity. You're being authentic. You don't know what to say. We don't all have all the answers. I know I have said several times, listen, there are things I am learning and have learned through this process about my own history, right? I'm not the authority on Black history.
Can I say one more thing? I forgot to say this, but if white supremacy were an octopus, one of the tentacles is perfection and requiring perfection before you do something. Wow. And so that is what was required to us as enslaved. And that has kind of been ingrained into our culture and this cancel culture is not doing anything to help it, right? But perfection is not the goal. And it's not that, intent can still create, positive intent can still create negative impact. But you are going to have to be okay with making mistakes, with saying things the wrong way, with getting that word wrong, with not understanding they moved to this term yesterday and now you need to learn it and use it, right? You're gonna have to be okay with that and still keep trying and still keep doing.
That's good. That's good. And I think that's a perfect opportunity for you to jump in, Kirsten, because again, I love the way when you opened up, you actually were very vulnerable in saying, listen, my definition of this has evolved. I wasn't getting it right all the time. So I think this is a great place for you to kind of chime in there.
Oh yeah, thank you. Well, I continue to learn, and I'm learning from the Black community. Meaning, George Floyd was not the first Black person killed by the police, and when I saw people on social media discussing it as if they were just struck by what's happening with this world, I was curious why they were just waking up to this. But I also know that certainly not me, but nobody can be the gatekeeper on when people wake up, on that time. So, because it's just, we're all evolving as humans in so many different ways. But I think that it's important, and I hold myself to the same standard, that we're constantly trying to learn, but also not put that labor of education on other people. Like, you can't call the one Black person in your phone that you've actually never called, you just have their phone number, be like, oh my God, explain everything to me, please. Like, there's this thing called Google.
Give me the whole history.
And there are, yeah, you know, I mean, I realized that we were not taught, I'm from Georgia. I grew up in the Georgia school system, public school system, and what I was taught does not resonate with things that I'm learning today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had a friend reach out to me to educate me earlier this year, earlier than George Floyd, you know, on the Tulsa massacre. I never learned that, you know, and I went to 5 colleges, you know, and not 5 colleges because I'm so brilliant, just 5 colleges.
I don't think anybody learned that in a school.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Lydia?
If they attended Lydia's school.
Oh, yeah. But I think we do, you know, we do better, you know, constantly as we're learning. And I like that Lydia pointed out that we can unlearn and we can unsee, and we have to stay vigilant. But going back to your accountability question, I think that we have to keep each other accountable. We, you know, especially for me, you know, in all cultures and communities, but as a white person, we can't let shit slide, you know. The day that everybody plopped those black squares up on their Instagram or their Facebook, and I'm like, I know what you say behind closed doors. I know. So let's not play, you know, that you're going to put that on your business, but then you're going to have this slew of racist comments, you know, on the side. So we got to talk about this.
Right.
And I think, and it can't, we, you know, the white people have to be willing to call people out. And what I'm trying to do right now is learn from, you know, Monique Melton and Rachel Cargill about what is the language to use where people aren't going to be like, just shut me down and keep going and doing what they're doing. So that's the education journey I'm on, because I have to learn how to talk to people about what I think they're doing is problematic without them shutting down. And that's, I mean, that is my 2020, you know, daily educational journey, and reading up on the psychology of that, because I know I've failed. I've known I've gotten defensive in the past when people have called me out on things previously. This year I've been called out on a couple of things and I've been like, thank you so much. I'm gonna figure this out, you know.
Right.
But
and I think it starts with the person, right? You had a shift. Like you know, I highly doubt the people who were approaching you shifted, but you had a shift, you know. So I definitely feel like it's an internal shift that has to happen with people, and possibly
really
by having these conversations that we're having right now will help them to start having those shifts, because they will hear different perspectives and be met with different perspectives as well. So let's roll into our last and final question. You know, and this is the part where, you know, again, back to Kirsten's point of we gotta call people out when we see that it's just not what it is, right? I know my mom used to always use the phrase, you know, you call a spade a spade. I mean, you know, if it's not right, it's not right. So what are a few examples so that, you know, our audience, our listeners out there, you know, if they're wondering, okay, I love that they have defined and kind of clarified what authentic activism is, but what does it look like? And so I want to, you know, really drive that home by you guys sharing a couple of examples of maybe what is an example of authentic, you know, good authentic activism that you have seen, but then also on the flip side, you know, what's an example of unauthentic activism that you've seen, you know. And again, this is not to be ugly, this is not to tear anyone down, but it is I believe, good to again, hold ourselves accountable to what is right and what is wrong.
So I don't want to forget this because I actually have two really good examples, and I wish I remembered their name, but one of them was their planner company. And they took a while to, and like paper planners, but they took a while to come out with a statement. But when they did, it was like, we realized we hadn't been doing right. And here's like our like 5-step plan on how we're gonna address this. Like, we're gonna look at our company and work with more designers of color. We're going to remove quotes from like Thomas Jefferson because he owned slaves, and we didn't realize that, you know, that might be impacting our people of color who are buying stuff. And
right, triggering.
Exactly. And like they actually like looked at what they were doing and how to make that better. And like they you could tell they thought about really the impact of what their planner was. And you know, if you're a person of color and you open it up and you see this quote, oh, that's offensive to me, but I still like this planner. They thought about all of that. And I thought that was an excellent example of like being authentic in activism and showing that they're willing to do the work for it, because, you know, they could turn people off from buying their product and they didn't care. Right. And then I think Jenna Fisher, I want to say that's her last name. Like she, you know, holding up, you know, oh, I did like missionary work with this little brown baby, and like I love Black people, but you know, my whole feed everywhere is all white people, and of course I can't work with Black people because I live in a small town in Wisconsin and there's no Black people around. Like that, to me, that's a horrible example. You're trying to just show like, no, I don't want to lose people because I have all these like tentacles everywhere, my name's on everything, and I don't want to lose that, so I'm going to put this out there, but I don't really mean it. And when she got called out on it, she was immediately defensive, which just made it so much worse for her. And like, I think she lost a lot of support from a lot of people. So to me, that's a very inauthentic or not good way to go about that. Like just the defensiveness because you're getting called out. And like Kirsten said, you know, it's natural for people to be defensive, but if you're not willing to listen and learn, then you're doing a disservice.
Right, exactly. You definitely, it's an opportunity for you to check your whatever, ego, whatever at the door, you know, and just enter back in with grace and being humble, humble because you don't know, you know. Kirsten, Lydia, which one of you like to jump in next?
Oh, Lydia, you go first.
So I'm gonna give 2 examples that are good because I think, again, with me not really loving the cancel culture and not wanting people to not try, then I don't want to focus as much on the negative. We can see it and we know it, and hopefully we will call that out as it happens and people can learn and grow. But I'll start with Marley Diaz, who was 11 years old when she created 1,000 Black girl books, or 1,000 books for Black girls. And this was in 2015 because she saw in her school that she couldn't find books that represented her. She started this hashtag. Her mom helped her get a grassroots campaign, basically, and it became a movement. Wow. So that was authentic activism. This is something that is important to me. It's important to my peers because I have peers who look like me. And all around the country, there are girls who look like me who don't have access to titles with illustrations, with stories that represent us. And so even me as an 11-year-old, I can have a voice. So that's a great example.
That's a great example.
And I also like that example because it wasn't in response to something. It wasn't in response to something national that, you know, like she wasn't tagging on to something that was already happening. This is just what was real for her at the moment. Alexis Ohanian, I think that's how you pronounce his name, but Serena Williams' husband.
Okay.
He's co-founder of this company. He decides to put his money where his mouth is, literally, and step down from the board and tell the board that they need to hire a Black replacement for him. That is authentic activism, because those boards pay you money, right? The decisions that will come from him not being on a board of something that he founded, that's huge. So that's another example. But I just say the day-to-day authentic activism that I see people doing who will never, have a name that we see in the annals of history, they're buying books, they're reading them, they're having conversations, they're asking questions, they are sharing what they're learning, whether it's popular or unpopular. That is authentic, great activism that I'm seeing every day.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And thank you for putting that in the context of just daily, right? Because I do think, again, it may not get as much spotlight, but at least it's happening. All right, Kirsten, what about you?
So yeah, I think the daily grind is where it's at, especially for, just speaking for the white folks, like there's a makeup artist in South Carolina, Latia Curtis, and she did this a really great video on Facebook about putting on makeup. It was a makeup tutorial, but everything involved Black Lives Matter. So she was putting on her Black Lives Matter mascara and Black Lives Matter lipstick, but also, I think what was really important was, so she's a Black business owner, but for white folks and people who are not Black, we have the option of taking that off at night, and we can't, and that's the main thing for that, that staying vigilant, staying involved. This is not a phase. And this is not just a way to score brownie points with your clients or customers or even your Black friends. We have to stay in it. Rest at night, but get back in it the next day, and in every way that you can. Whether it's whether you think it's small or not. Some of the people who've done really amazing activism work that I've seen are. E.R. Anderson. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and E.R. runs Karis Circle, which is part of Karis Books. And they plan some really amazing, and they've been doing this for years, race-conscious collective parenting groups. So, people of all, backgrounds can come in and really figure out, for me, that's really important. My wife and I, we're raising 2 white boys who will eventually be white men. And it's important to us that they are feminist, that they're anti-racist, and that they are going to continue the work to try to dismantle white supremacy, and that they also understand that even the businesses that my wife and I own, were built on, some of the privileges that we've gained, whether we know it or not. Some we know, and some we'll probably never fully know about, benefits of white supremacy, and that our sons understand that, and that they can spot things and are going to be trained in that way. And not to put this back on myself, I'm not trying to, but I'm saying that ER is doing this work of teaching people, in terms, not just in parenting, but in many different ways, and just staying with it, calmly educating people, directing them, people who are coming into the bookstore, directing them to the Black educators, the Black authors who are doing this important work, and how, teaching us who to listen to and how to listen. Another really good activist moment I had the other day was I had tagged somebody on Facebook. It's a not too important story to try to explain, but I had tagged somebody on Facebook who was friends. I had seen was friends with somebody who had posted something really problematic in terms of race. So it was a white woman that said it, and it had been shared on another page. I tagged another white person who I saw was friends with this person. I was like, oh, look at your friend, and she messaged me and said she was abhorred, but then she took it further and she said, I've reached out to this person. I've told her why her post is problematic. And that to me was, and she said, we've got to call them in. We've got to call them all in. And I think that is what I'd like to see spreading, around the world, is not afraid to rein our people in and be like, what the bleep, like we've got to change, and what you've done is problematic, and here's why, and here's how I think you can do better.
Yeah. No, that definitely is a part of the overall, conversation. And, back to, I think the point that each of you have made is that a lot of the authentic activism and the work on a daily basis starts with, disregarding our fear of having the conversations, being okay with the fact that we may get it wrong, the fact that, it's not always going to be perfect, to Lydia's point. And I'm actually very encouraged myself by some of the conversations that we've been having in one of the groups that I actually started, Moms Who Lead with Love, where we are having a lot of dialogue, just like what we're describing here, about, hey, how do I, if I am a person, a white person or a person of non-color, how do I approach this topic? Or am I wrong in saying this? There have been some very vulnerable moments that have been had, but I think that is where we start and where we continue, right? It's definitely not where we end, but it is where we start and where we continue. So I just want to thank each of you ladies for saying yes, first of all, to having this conversation, because I know that there are many other things that you have on your plates as well. And before we wrap up, if each of you will just quickly share where they can find you, if they want to follow your work and continue some of that dialogue offline with you, if you could share that, I would greatly appreciate it. How about we start with you, Kirsten?
Okay, easiest for me is equallywed.com, and you can find us all over social with that handle, and reach out anytime. I'm always available.
Awesome. Sasha?
So you can find me at creationsbysasha.com. On Instagram, it's creations_by_Sasha. The podcast is Swirl and Sip Podcast, and at Swirl and Sip Podcast on Instagram. And so yeah, DM me. That's where I'm at.
Awesome. And Lydia?
I'm gonna give you my personal info because my businesses are varied, and I like truth in advertising. So if you want to work with me, then you should probably know a little bit about who I am first and how I'm gonna show up. So I Wonders, EYEWANDERS. I Wonders is my Instagram, and then on Facebook, Lydia Kearney Carlis. I think Kearney is my born name. Yeah, if you follow me, I leave all of my important things public on purpose, so that potential people who want to work with me can get a taste for what they will experience.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in again with us on this episode of The Eventful Life. We strive to really highlight women in business, as well as mompreneurs who are out here thriving every day. It's real women, real talk, and real change. We hope that you will join us for the next episode next Thursday at 1 o'clock. We're always right here, same time, different dates, but same time and same day. And we'll be, ready to have that dialogue again. Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoy your week, and remember to activate your authentic activism in a way that, is authentic to you. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.